Hey everyone, this is Paul Jensen. Welcome to the Week 6 prediction video for the Danker Family Fantasy Football League. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. First, let's go over some of the transactions that went over this week. Some things that caught my eye. John finally dropping Dalton Kincaid, picking up Logan Thomas. Probably just a matchup thing for this week since Thomas hasn't really been super reliable, but um, Dalton Kincaid, neither has Dalton Kincaid, so John's trying something new there. And John Lop is also adding. Yeah, he also added the Chiefs defense. He actually did pretty well against Denver on Thursday night. So that was a good decision by John, dropping Lions D and picking up Kansas City. So uh, great pickup for John. For myself, I made quite a ton of moves. I'm desperate. I'm in last place. It's not looking good for me. I got rid of some Packers, even though I'm a cheesehead. So, got rid of Luke Musgrave, added Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz just seems like he's been a little bit more reliable this year, and he's one of the top targets in Arizona. I also, where else did I go? I also added Geno Smith and dropped Jordan Love. Geno Smith, just more of a dual threat guy so far. Jordan Love, I mean, he started off great. He hasn't been doing well lately. I don't know. Maybe the fact that I dropped them makes it so they'll do better. I don't know. Kind of weird logic in my head. And then I also added Tyler Algier just as a backup running back. Who knows? It's good to have he's a solid guy just to have in case something happens to Bijan Robinson or anything like that. And then Carol, I saw that she added KJ Osborne and dropped Alvin Cook. So interesting, a little add there since Justin Jefferson's going to be out for a while. KJ Osborne's production might go up. So interesting pickup for Carol. For Adrian, this one was kind of confusing to me. I mean, I get it, right? Daniel Jones is not good, so he dropped him. I mean, that's a clear decision, but he added Jeff Wilson Jr., who's currently on IR, and I don't think he's coming off IR tomorrow in the matchup against Carolina because I think he's still on IR. So he might just pick him up, you know, thinking, oh, he'll be active the week after, and Achan will still be out and he'll be inserted in the lineup then. So that's maybe my thought process on what his thought process could have been on that one. Joan, she added Josh Palmer and dropped Sky Moore. That's another interesting one. Josh Palmer should be the wide receiver 2 in LA with the Chargers since Mike Williams is out for the year. So that could be a good sneaky good pickup. And she also added the Raiders defense and dropped Jets. Clearly matchup based. The Jets defense has been playing well, but obviously they're playing the Eagles this week, and that's gonna be tough. It's a very tough one to. I don't think the Jets will do great against Philly's offense. Although who knows? We never know. But the Raiders defense are playing the Patriots, and the last 2 weeks the Patriots offense has been atrocious. So could be a good matchup pickup for mom there. For Uncle Tom, he finally made where was that? Beach Desert. There we go. Uncle Tom finally made a transaction. He hasn't really made many. He didn't really have to make many, but he added Dalton Schultz, who's surprisingly been a pretty productive tight end the last couple of weeks, even though he doesn't need him because he's got T.J. Hawkinson. But little interesting ad there. Just a good backup tight end to have for when T.J. Hawkinson goes on a bye. And then Nels, Dad, you picked up someone. Where are you? Oh yeah, you picked up Tyler Higbee and dropped Kenneth Gainwell, and then you immediately dropped Tyler Higbee to pick up Rico Dowdle, however you pronounce that, with Dallas. Very interesting pickup. A little confused, but because he is a backup for Dallas, I don't know if anything happened to Tony Pollard. I think Pollard's supposed to play. I didn't know if he was injured or not, but yeah, just a little bit of an interesting pickup there. And then finally, Carey for the second time, adding Tyjae Spears, backup running back in Tennessee, while dropping Josh Reynolds. Wow, you put Reynolds in the starting lineup, he gives you 17, and that's how you treat him, Carey? You drop him? I'm just kidding. Amon-Ra St. Brown's coming back, so that's actually a pretty wise decision by Carey. So those are all the main transactions from this week. Looking at the waiver report just to see who missed out. Nels, Dad, I beat you to Zach Ertz, and same thing with John. Nelson, John both tried to go for Zach Ertz, and I was fortunate enough to be ahead of them on the waiver order. So I just really needed a better tight end for my team. And then John also missed out on someone else. I think he also missed out on the Raiders defense. So congratulations, Joan, for beating John to the punch there. And then Joan, I guess she was trying to go for someone else. She was trying to go for the Chiefs defense first, but was unsuccessful because I believe John or someone who picked up the Chiefs. Yeah, so that's funny because like Joan went for the Chiefs defense, John got him or got them, and then John went for the Raiders defense, but Joan got so it's a little bit of a they're going after each other's defenses. So yeah, I guess it all works out for you guys in the end. So we'll see how that goes. But moving on to the main event here, matchup predictions for Week 6. So first matchup of the week. 3-2 Ben Danker versus the sadly last place losers 1-4 Phoenix Cheeseheads. Yes. And yes, I know we had the game on Thursday night, so that will influence my decision. So apologize. But this one actually didn't have anyone playing on Thursday night, so this one's going to be a little bit more of a fair prediction. Starting off at quarterback, we got Tua versus Justin Fields, two dual threat quarterbacks, although Justin Fields is probably much more of a runner than Tua is now since the Dolphins have so many quick playmakers that they don't really need Tua to run much. And Justin Fields has been heating up lately. Last couple of weeks, he's been playing well. He is playing at home against a pretty questionable Vikings defense. So I do like Justin. They're both projected at the same at 20.3, although Carolina's secondary has surprisingly been pretty decent. Like I think they've given up the 10th fewest passing yards, I think something like that in uh in the league, or it's either 10th or 5th. But either way, they're in the top tier of passing defenses, surprisingly. So I'm actually gonna give Ben the slight edge at quarterback, just the way Justin Fields has been playing the last couple of weeks. He's just been playing out of his mind, and being at home against the poor Vikings defense, I think Justin Fields goes off. Not to say Tua can't, but I think the Dolphins are just going to rely a little bit more on the run game against Carolina than the pass game. Moving on to the running backs, again, my running backs. I mean, Derrick Henry can be good at times, but he hasn't been consistent enough. And Jerome Ford, he's just a guy replacing Nick Chubb, and he's going up against San Francisco, has one of the best run defense in all football. I really have no other options at running back this week, so it's not looking good for me running back wise. I've been trying to make some trades. You know who you are. I just haven't been able to pull the trigger on some, and others have been rejected. So, yeah. Ben's just got the easy favorite at running backs. It goes without saying. Christian McCaffrey's a beast. Travis Etienne, he's been doing well lately. He did well against Indianapolis week 1. I expect that to continue. He's just been one of the more reliable pass catchers for Trevor Lawrence in that offense. And then looking at receivers, I'm actually going to go with my receivers just slightly over his. AJ Brown's got a tough matchup against. He'll still do good, but he's got a tough matchup going up against Sauce and the Jets defense this week. Calvin Ridley's, I think he'll do well against Indianapolis. But Puka Nacua has, even as a number 2 receiver with the Rams, he's been tremendous, and he's just been one of the most reliable, most productive players in all fantasy football. And going up against a really weak Cardinal secondary who just got gashed by Cincinnati last week, I expect the Rams dominant passing game to continue. And also Devontae Adams, he kind of had a down week. He was coming off a shoulder injury, but he's been looking better in practice this week, and he's going up against Patriots defense, who's looked pretty bad the last couple of weeks. So I do like my receivers just slightly over Ben's. Not to say Ben doesn't have good receivers, he does. I just like mine just a little bit better. At tight end, I am going to go with Ben slightly. Cole Kmet's been playing really well last couple of weeks, last 2 weeks, in fact. And again, Minnesota's defense has been a little more suspect. Now, Zach Ertz has been reliable. I've had a little bit of a debate of whether or not I want to start Kyle Pitts or Zach Ertz. Kyle Pitts did have the best game of his season last week, but he just hasn't been really reliable. And he still even hasn't gotten a touchdown yet, where Zach Ertz has been a little bit more consistent. And he's also probably the number 2 passing option for Josh Dobbs in the Cardinals offense right now. So I like Cole Kmet's matchup a little bit more than Ertz's, though, even though the Rams do tend to not do well against tight ends. But I just think the Bears are starting to slowly figure things out, and Justin Fields loves Cole Kmet. So, and also DJ Moore, but that goes without saying. So I'm going to say Cole Kmet has a slight advantage here. At flex, I will give me the edge at flex. Keenan Allen, been easily my best fantasy player so far. I mean, other than Puka Nacua. Keenan Allen's been one of my more productive players this season, and he's coming off the bye week, so he should be nice and fresh. Going up against Dallas's defense, who struggled against the pass last week against San Francisco. Justin Herbert's been one of the better quarterbacks in the league this year, and Keenan being the solid number one, and not having Mike Williams as a great wide receiver two. Now they have Josh Palmer as wide receiver two. He's not as trustworthy. I love Keenan Allen's matchup more than Jacoby Myers. Now Patriots defense is bad, but Jacoby Myers is also wide receiver two in Vegas, and he is going up against his former team, so I know he'll definitely want to have a great game, but I just think Keenan Allen's game will be a little bit better. So I'm going to give myself the edge there. At defense, I'm also going to give myself the edge. 49ers defense has just been playing incredible. They're playing a Browns team where Deshaun Watson's going to be out. Yeah, Deshaun Watson's not going to be playing. I think PJ Walker is going to be the starting quarterback for the Browns. So I just, that matchup is way too good to not play. And Seattle's defense, I mean, they're playing on the road against a Bengals offense who looked pretty great last week. Now, was that just Bengals playing the Cardinals, or because the Bengals were struggling up until last week? So that is an interesting play by Ben, but I do think Cincinnati I think they're starting to slowly figure things out, and they're going to come back to form, and I think Cincinnati will do well this week. So I'm going to give myself the edge at defense as well. So I think this is going to be a close matchup. Like I think it'll be tight between Ben and I. However, just with my poor luck and my lack of running backs, and I think Justin Fields will do a lot better than Tua, and the Cole Kmet Zach Ertz matchup will be key also. But overall, I just think Ben will get a slight close win in this one. I think Ben wins maybe by single digits, or maybe even like a little over double digits, like maybe 11 or 12. But yeah, I think Ben's got the win here. Some options just for either of us to consider. Ben's got two Packers on buys, but that doesn't really matter for him. But he has Chris Godwin, who's coming back off of his best performance in Week 4, I think, against the Saints defense. So Chris Godwin could be a better decision than Jacoby Myers. I know Jacoby Myers has been playing better overall, but Chris Godwin, I think he's due for his first touchdown of the season. He hasn't gotten one yet, but or actually, I don't think he has. Let me click on him real quick just to see if he has. No, he has not gotten any touchdowns yet. So, yeah, I think Chris Godwin, especially with Mike Evans, who's dealing with an injury, he could be a solid plan at flex instead. Amari Cooper would be a decent option if he weren't playing the 49ers, or B, if he had Deshaun Watson throwing to him. But since neither of those are in his favor, I think it's good that Ben is sitting Amari Cooper. But yeah, other than that, I think he's playing it just right. Yeah, so that Godwin Myers matchup is the only thing I would really ponder if I were Ben. For me, there's a lot, like I said, Pitts versus Ertz. It was a little tough, but I think I'm going to go with Ertz in this matchup. I would question, should I try going with something crazy like Algier at RB2 instead of Jerome Ford? Now, the only problem is Algier is a backup running back. He's not going to get the majority of the touches. He will get some goal lines, and so he is a vulture. He has the potential to be a vulture and get some touchdowns, but he just hasn't been doing that well lately. And Jerome Ford is a starting back, even though he's going up against a tough matchup in the 49ers defense. He will get the load at the load of the carries at running back, and he'll also be a good, screen or check down option for PJ Walker in the Browns offense. So, yeah, that was kind of my thought process there. And do I dare think about starting Geno Smith over Tua? I mean, it's crazy, right? Tua's, the Miami's offense is incredible, and they've been lighting it up. But like even though last week the Dolphins did pretty well offensively, but Tua still threw 2 picks, and he only got 16 points against the Giants defense, who's been really bad. So, and Geno Smith's going up against the Cincinnati defense that hasn't been playing well either. And Geno Smith runs the ball a little bit more than Tua. So I'm questioning it. I'm thinking about it. I really am. Who knows? I might start Geno Smith, or I might just chicken out and start Tua. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But I do think Ben will get the slight win in this one. Moving on to the second matchup, we have Carrie versus Joan, mom versus daughter. Very interesting matchup here. We got a 2-3 carry trying to get off that 3-game losing streak against Mom, who I think she's won 2 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but yeah, let's dive right into this one. For the quarterbacks, it's going to be interesting to see how Kirk Cousins does. He is going up against a bad Bears defense, but he is missing Justin Jefferson. I do think that will show just a little bit. And Josh Allen has been playing out of his mind recently, and he's going up against the Giants defense, who's just been really bad lately. I mean, they did get a pick six against Tua, but Tua's kind of prone to interceptions, and Josh Allen, he's been taking care of the ball lately. So I think Mom's got the advantage at quarterback here. At running back, I'm also going to give the advantage slightly to Mom. Now, this was a little tough because Breece Hall is coming off the best game of his of the season last week. He is going up against a tougher Philly defense who does well against the run. James Cook will do good against the Giants. I really do think so. But Alexander Madison's been playing a lot better recently, and even though he's not getting those like 15 plus point games, he is consistently giving you double digits. And so I think that, and again, the Bears run defense is not that good. So I think Alexander Madison will have a good game. And Raheem Mostert, this is his time to shine now that Achane is on IR for Miami. I think Raheem Mostert will go off, especially with Carolina having a bad run defense. Carolina's got a good pass defense, so Miami's going to want to run the ball. So I think I like Raheem Mostert and Madison, that combo, more than the Breece Hall, James Cook combo. So I give Mom the edge at running back. At receiver, though, I will give this edge to Carey. I'm on, sorry, Amon-Ra St. Brown's coming off injury, so he's back, and expect him to get, his typical 15 plus performance game, although he probably is in score for maybe a touchdown or two. Um, yeah, the Detroit's offense has just been playing out of their mind lately, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to do well. And then Marquise Brown. Now he has been dealing with an illness, so he is questionable going into the game. But if he does play, I do like his potential. He's been very consistent, getting you 15, 16 plus points week to week. He's been quietly one of the more reliable wide receivers in all fantasy football. So I do like that the decision to play if he is active, that is. I like this combo of the Browns, the St. Brown and Brown, over Garrett Wilson and Christian Kirk. Garrett Wilson, he'll do fine. It's just he's dealing against a good defense in Philly and not as reliable quarterback in Zach Wilson. And then Christian Kirk, he's been doing well. That is true. But he's also, he also is the second wide receiver to Calvin Ridley, and the Colts secondary is awful. So I mean, he could. So I think Calvin Ridley will be the main receiver, obviously, getting majority of the targets. But Christian Kirk can go off. I just don't. I just like the Browns a lot more than Wilson and Kirk. So I'm gonna give Carey the edge there. At tight end, I'm gonna give Mom the slight. Or did I say that? Yeah, tight end. I'm gonna give Mom the slight advantage. Hunter Henry hasn't done much lately, mainly just because the Patriots' offense in general hasn't done much. I think it depends on how Mac Jones plays. Mac Jones seems to do well when he's targeting Henry a lot, but he hasn't been doing so lately. So I don't know if that's just the defenses are taking him away from Mac. So I don't know, but Vegas, their defense is a little sus. So I think Henry will do a little bit better this week, but Jake Ferguson's matchup against the Chargers defense I like a little bit better for Mom, just because the Chargers have the worst passing defense in all football. It's ranked 32nd out of 32 teams. So, and Jake Ferguson's has been kind of a reliable guy for Dak since Dalton Schultz left. So, and he's scored some touchdowns too. So I like Jake Ferguson a little bit more than Hunter Henry this week. At flex, this is probably the best flex matchup of the week. DJ Moore versus Austin Eckler. I mean, early in the season, I would have thought this would have been a no-brainer. Definitely Austin Eckler. I would have thought that for sure. But this is actually a lot tougher than I thought. And I mean, Eckler's coming off a bye week and an injury too. He hasn't played since week 1, but he is active. So Mom, do play Eckler. He will play. DJ Moore coming off that insane game against Washington where he scored 49 points. He is going up against a bad Vikings defense, so I like that for him. Eckler, though, he's going up against Dallas, who held Christian McCaffrey to just 12 points. Now, I know Eckler has been Eckler and Herbert have a great connection. He's a great dual threat running back. in the passing game and the run game. Although Dallas was able to figure out a way to limit Christian McCaffrey. So that's why I'm going to go with the slight edge for carry at flex with DJ Moore, just barely edging out Austin Eckler. At defense, I think this goes without saying. Mom's got the advantage here. Even though the Patriots are projected more, I don't understand why. Um, Patriots have not looked good at all the last couple of weeks, and I know that a lot of people are thinking, oh, it's a Patriots have been playing some tough opponents, and Raiders aren't that tough. The Patriots offense they haven't been able to get in sync at all. They haven't been able to do anything. They're not productive. And Josh McDaniels, he going up against the Patriots defense a lot in practice as the Patriots offensive coordinator for years. He's got to know a few things that Bill Belichick has in store. So I think that gives the Raiders quite the advantage on offense over the Patriots defense. And the Patriots offense has just been so lackluster and full of barely any talent that, the Raiders defense did pretty well against the lackluster Packers offense last week. I think they'll do just fine against the Patriots offense this week. So I'm going to give Mom the easy advantage at defense. So with that being said, Mom getting the advantage at quarterback, running back, tight end, and defense. I'm going to give Mom a pretty easy win here. I think she'll end up running away with it. Just some options to think about though for Carey, just in case. I think Carey's playing it pretty much right spot on. Just in case Marquise Brown is out with illness tomorrow for whatever reason, T. Higgins would be a solid. Now I know T. Higgins only had one good game this year so far, and he is coming off injury, but Cincinnati's offense starting to figure things out a little bit. He could be in for a decent game, especially going up against the Seahawks defense that's like pretty average. So then they'll probably want to do their best to limit Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon. So who knows? It could open things up for T. Higgins. And then also Chuba Hubbard, maybe consider starting him at flex if you want. If this is all if Marquise Brown can't play from his illness, then you could move DJ Moore up to receiver 2 and put Chuba at flex. Chuba Hubbard is the starting back this week for Carolina since Miles Sanders is out, and Chuba has been, or the Miami's defense has been pretty susceptible to the run game. So that is something to ponder if you're Carey. And then for Joan, the tight, I know they're giving Darren Waller a higher projection, but don't listen to this. I don't understand this. I think you're playing it right by playing Jake Ferguson. Darren Waller has been he's a roller coaster. He's up, down. He did well last week, granted, but Buffalo's defense has been very impressive. They're one of the top defenses in the league, especially against the pass. And the Giants offense, they're just unreliable especially with no Daniel Jones. He's out, so they're dealing with a new quarterback in Tyrod Taylor, and just the matchup in general. So I think that's a good decision that you're sitting Darren Waller instead. And then also, one thing to maybe I think you're playing it right, Mom, but Josh Palmer maybe over Christian Kirk, but in the end, I think Christian Kirk is the better play, but I just think there's a little bit of a chance that Josh Palmer, being wide receiver 2, might get a little bit more production, but I think Christian Kirk's a little bit more reliable. So you're playing it right, but it's just something to maybe, consider just in case. But overall, though, I think you're playing it right. And the fact that, we know that Harrison Butker got 18 points. I don't see Tyler. I mean, now, the Giants defense is pretty bad, so there could be a chance that Tyler Bass gets into the double digits in kicking, really gets to 18 points. I don't know, probably not. So that even gives me more of a reason to think that Joan will win this matchup versus Carey. Going into the next matchup, 2-3 Nels Jensen versus 5-0 undefeated leader of the league, Tom Danker. So after Thursday night, Nelson's winning a little bit. This one was tough for me to project who will do better at QB. Lamar Jackson has been boom or bust. He's either giving you 20 plus points or he's getting you single digits. And the Titans they have one of the best run defenses in all football. So they are very weak against the pass. And Lamar Jackson last week his stats should have actually been a lot better last week, but he had a lot of drops from his receivers, from tight end Mark Andrews. So I think the Ravens will clean things up in the passing game this week. They are playing in London, I believe, against Tennessee, so that'll be an early game. But I do think this will be a bounce back game for Lamar. I think he'll be able to figure out a way to exploit the Titans secondary. And even though the Titans will do the best they can to limit him in the run game, I think Lamar will have a bounce back game. And I think he will get more than 17.34 points that Mahomes got. So I will give Nels the slight advantage at quarterback. At running back, though, I think it's a heavy advantage for Tom. I mean, Josh Jacobs has been hot lately. He's been going off. Kenneth Walker's coming off the bye, but even then, he's been one of the more productive running backs in fantasy, going up against a weak Cincinnati defense. And yeah, I mean, Brian Robinson's going up against one of the best rushing defenses in the league in Atlanta. Atlanta has surprisingly been a decent defense, just, at least against the run, but not against the pass. So I don't know. Like, and plus, I know Brian Robinson's kind of got that receiver back potential, and Tony Pollard's been great. But I just like the combo a little bit better for Tom. At receiver, this may surprise some people. I do have Nels with the slight advantage at receiver. Now, Tyreek, I think, like I said, the Panthers have like the fifth best pass defense in all of football. It's either fifth or 10th, but still, they're a top 10 passing defense. So I think Miami will run the ball a lot, and they're not going to need to throw that much. Now, Tyreek Hill will still have a great game. Don't get me wrong. I think he will definitely get at least 15 points. Will he hit 20? I'm not sure he will, but he could. He definitely could. But um, I think the odds are more in the favor of the Dolphins' run game going off and the passing game doing well, but just, not as well as they did against the Broncos, for example, or even last week against the Giants. So, um, and Devontae Smith's coming off a pretty bad game against the Rams, and he's the second option. Now he might flourish a little bit more AJ Brown's gonna be going up against Gardner Johnson, or against Sauce Gardner, I should say. Um, but Chris Olave, he's been okay the last couple of weeks. I think he does better against a young Houston secondary. I think that's another thing that the Houston's run game has been good, but their pass game has been, defensive wise, has been bad. So I think Derek Carr gets the ball to Chris Olave a lot this week against a young secondary in Houston. Michael Pittman, he's Jacksonville's defense has actually been pretty bad against top tier receivers. If you look into it, like all the number one receivers Jacksonville's faced, besides the Chiefs game, because the Chiefs game, no one could get anything going in that game. That was a defensive slugfest. But other than that, number one receivers have been doing really well against Jacksonville. Even last week, Stephon Diggs did great. So, and even week one, Michael Pittman went for 23 against Jacksonville. So I think that continues. I think Pittman has a great game. Olave has a nice bounce back game. And Devontae Smith kind of does well, but doesn't do too much. I think 13.8 might even be a little bit too high. I think it gives you maybe 11 or 12 points. And then Tyreek Hill, I think doesn't hit. I think the odds are more that Tyreek doesn't even get 20. I think he gets more like 15 or somewhere maybe high as 17. So I like Dad's receivers just slightly over Tom's receivers. At tight end, I would have said Kelsey either way. He did get you 21 points, Dad. So, and I think Hawkinson will do good, especially since Jefferson's out. Kirk Cousins is going to go to Hawkinson a lot more, especially against the Bears defense. But I don't know if Hawkinson will be able to get 21. Now he can, obviously. He went off against Philly in week 2. I remember that. But I just think the odds are more in favor of Hawkinson not getting 20 points. So I'm going to give Dad the edge at tight end. And then at flex, Dad's playing Adam Thielen. So there you go. A good he's been doing really well. So that's a decent option. Although the downside is he's going up against David Montgomery, and David Montgomery has been one of the hottest players in all of fantasy football, and I expect that, especially with Jahmyr Gibbs out, I expect that to continue. Lions offense has just been incredible, and I expect it to continue. So I'm going to give Tom the slight edge at flex, and then at defense, I'm going to give now Dolphins have a good matchup against the young Carolina offense, but Buffalo's been the most reliable defense, one of the most reliable defenses in all fantasy football, and they're at home against a pretty weak Giants team that's not even going to have their starting quarterback play, and Saquon Barkley's even questionable, so it's possible that they don't even have their starting quarterback or their starting running back. So I like the Bills matchup way more here, so I'm going to give Tom the edge at defense. So with that all being said, I think it's going to be a close game because I think Lamar, Travis, Thielen, and the other two receivers doing well for Nels. I do think though that Tom's three running backs will barely take him over the edge. I wanted to pick you, Dad. I really did, but I just can't. I got to go with Uncle Tom here. I think Tom wins in a close one. Just some other options to ponder. Again, Deebo Samuel on your bench. Interesting. We'll see if I think that's a good play. It's just interesting because Deebo's usually been one of the more dynamic fantasy players, but I mean, you got three great options, I think. And I know some people would have questioned, starting Chris Olave, but no, I think Chris Olave's matchup is way too good for him to sit, especially and Pittman's as well. And then Thielen's just been Mr. Reliable. He's Bryce Young's favorite target by far, and there's really no other close second option in Carolina. So, yeah, I think even though it's shocking that Samuel's on their bench, I think it's a great decision. And then also, the Saints defense, they've been playing pretty well lately. And I know I know Dolphins have a better matchup against Carolina, so it's just something to maybe think about. Like the Saints defense has just been a lot more reliable than the Dolphins defense, but the Dolphins do have a better matchup. So it's just another thing to potentially think about. For Tom, you know, this could be an option. Maybe you play Ayuk instead of Devontae Smith. I just think, Ayuk's been a pretty productive receiver going up against Browns. Now the Browns do have a good defense, but I think that their defense will struggle because their offense is going to be so limited against San Francisco that the 49ers offense is going to be on the field a lot more than the Browns offense will this game. And I think that bodes well for Ayuk getting a lot of early catches, early receptions. Browns' run defense is pretty good, so maybe they'll hold McCaffrey. I'm hoping they hold McCaffrey because I'm going up against Ben, who has him. But yeah, maybe they hold McCaffrey in the run game real well, and they're forced to throw it a lot. And I think Ayuk might even be a better play than Devontae Smith this week. So, but then again, Tom's undefeated, so why even listen to me? So, yeah, and then also Kyron Williams. I mean, I get it, you have three other great running backs, but man, Kyron Williams has been pretty great in fantasy this year. I mean, last week he struggled a little bit, but other than that, he's been pretty reliable, and he's even projected to have almost 19 points, and he's on your bench. And hey, if I'm looking for running backs, Tom, give me an offer. I will. I'm all ears. If you want something for Kyron Williams, let me in on it, please. All right. Sorry, I can't talk. Moving on to the next game, Carroll versus John Lopp. I think this one was actually the hardest one to predict so far. You got a lot of similarities in this one. Jalen Hurts versus Justin Herbert at quarterback. Aside from week one, Jalen Hurts has been great. He's been getting you 20 plus points aside from week one. Justin Herbert, though, he's just been outstanding. He's been Mr. Consistent at quarterback. I was this close to getting him in the draft, but John just barely beat me out, and I was very upset about it. Yeah, Herbert's been dynamite easily, and I know he's going against a tough Dallas defense, but I expect Justin Herbert to continue because the Chargers, they have really no other option. They're going to need to throw the ball, especially to beat Dallas. And Jalen Hurts is going to have against a tough. I mean, he will be on the road and a little bit of a tougher opponent in the Jets. So I will give John just a slight edge at quarterback here. When it comes to running backs, Isaiah Pacheco got 15, so he under-projected, or he under-hit his projection, I should say. I think Mixon will do fine against Seattle. Bijan's going to have a bounce-back game, I do think, against Washington. Washington did pretty bad against Chicago's run game, and that was shocking. So I think Bijan Robinson will have a nice bounce-back game because he didn't really do well against Houston, but I do think he will do well against Washington. And Kamara, he's been great so far. I think that continues well. Again, now I know Houston's run defense is great, but Kamara has been the way the Saints have used Kamara so far. He's been catching a lot of balls, and I think that bodes well for the Saints against a young Houston defense. So I'm gonna go with John's running back slightly over Carroll's. So give John the slight advantage there. At receiver, this one was really close. I mean, you got Jamar Chase, who went off last week. Cooper Kupp came back looking strong, going up against a weak Cardinals defense. Seattle's defense isn't that weak, but Jamar Chase is just, he's had a lot, he seems, I mean, obviously it's only been one game for Cup, but Chase has been a little bit more reliable. Um, and Zay Flowers, going up against Titans' run defense is great, so I think Ravens are going to throw the ball, and I think Zay Flowers goes off and has a good game. He'll bounce back from that tough game he had last week where he dropped a lot of passes against Pittsburgh. Jordan Addison, he'll be wide receiver one for the Vikings now that Justin Jefferson's out. So that could open things up for Addison against a pretty weak Bears defense. This was really close. Like I couldn't lie to you. Like this, I was very unsure who to pick, but because because of the matchup for Zay Flowers against Tennessee's weak secondary, and because Jamar Chase did so well last week, I think that continues. And I think Carroll's running backs are just barely better than John's, or I mean receivers. Yeah, Carroll's receivers will be barely just better than John's receivers. Now I think John receivers will do great too, but give Carroll the edge at wide receiver. Tight end, this is an easy one. Carroll's got the edge. It says only 10.4. I think Sam Laporta is going to do great. He's been tremendous, and Logan Thomas does have a favorable matchup against Atlanta, but he's just not that reliable, especially since Sam Laporta has a better quarterback. So give me Carroll's tight end over John's. Flex, this one's hard to predict. I know Saquon's questionable, so he could play, he might not play. Even if he does play, he's going up against the Bills defense that's they're gonna try to force Tyrod Taylor to throw the ball because they know that, Saquon's pretty much their best offensive player now. So he might be limited, and especially coming off the injury, he might not do as well. And then Nico Collins, he is wide receiver one, but he's been kind of up and down too. He hasn't been as reliable, and he's going up against the Saints secondary that is pretty stout. Marcus Lattimore is a legit lockdown cornerback. He did well against Mike Evans just a few weeks ago. Last week he did insane against Patriots. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I think if these two do play, meaning Barkley, because then we know Collins will play, but if Barkley does play, I will give John just a slight advantage at flex. But it could go either way, honestly. And then at defense, since we already know Kansas City got 16 points, the Ravens, I mean, they didn't look too good against Pitt. I mean, they looked good, but up until the last drive last week, that kind of killed the Ravens defense for fantasy last week. So I think the Ravens defense will do well. I don't think they'll get 16. I think maybe they'll get 10 or 12 at most. But so I'm going to give John just a slight edge at defense. So with that all being said, I think this is a close one. I really do. But I'm going to give the edge slightly to John in this matchup. I think John, because he has Herbert, because I think his running backs will do slightly better, and if Saquon plays, and even if Saquon doesn't play, John has options for days at flex, and I think having that depth for those options bodes well for him. So I think John will win. And going over those options, for John, if Saquon doesn't play, he's got Jalen Waddle, he's got Tyler Lockett, he's got Jonathan Taylor, he's got Gabe Davis, who's been playing really well, he's got Zach Moss, who went off last week. So he's got all these options for one position here if he really wants to. So even if Saquon Barkley doesn't play, I still think any of these options would be a little bit more reliable play than Nico Collins. Now maybe the Zach Moss Jonathan Taylor dichotomy is a little tough to think about, but even if you just do the three receivers, Waddle, Lockett, and Davis over Collins, I think any one of those will actually have a better game because of their matchups. So yeah, I think that's kind of what puts John over the edge. For Carol, she doesn't have many good options really. I mean, maybe she can consider starting KJ Osborne instead of Nico Collins just because KJ Osborne's got a better matchup. But Nico Collins is the number one receiver and KJ Osborne's number two behind Jordan Addison. But KJ Osborne has been playing more with Kirk Cousins and he's got that more of a connection long term. So who knows? But I think she's playing it just right. I mean, she really doesn't have many other good options here, in my opinion. So we'll see how that goes. And then going on to the final matchup of the week, Adrian 3-2 versus Garrett 2-3. Yeah, I think this is a blowout. I think Adrian gets an easy win here. And I know I usually don't say the prediction until the end, but I think Garrett only has an advantage in one spot, and that's quarterback. And everything else, it's all Adrian. Sam Howell did great last week against the Bears defense. The Falcons defense surprisingly has held opposing quarterbacks to either 20, like I think they've only had one quarterback that will go up against them score 20 points, and that was Jordan Love. And that's it. All the other quarterbacks that Atlanta's faced, not like 15 or less. So I do think Sam Howell won't do nearly as good as Jared Goff or if Joe Burrow if Garrett decides to play either one. Because Garrett could go either way here with Burrow or Goff. They both played really well last week. Um, so I think Garrett's got the easy advantage at quarterback, but everything else, running backs, Stevenson's, he hasn't been reliable yet, but he is going up against a weak Raiders run defense. So I think Stevenson will have the potential to finally have a decent game. And then DeAndre Swift's been pretty great. He's been very reliable. Even though the Jets have a good defense, I think the Eagles he's been pretty much solidified as the number one back in Philly when at the beginning of the year it seemed like they were going to have kind of like a dual or triple threat at running back. But no, he's been more reliable. For Garrett, Aaron Jones is on a bye. Jerick McKinnon already played, so he can't play him. And Dameon Pierce has been decent, but he is going up against a tough Saints run defense. And Rashawn Johnson's out. He's projected at 0. So Garrett, you should probably get a running back. So yeah, I'm going to give Adrian the heavy advantage of running back. Receiver, also going to give Adrian the advantage, especially since we know that Jerry Jeudy only got 4.5 points. Mike Evans is coming off injury, so I think he'll do well. But, Stephon Diggs has been playing out of his mind, and he's got a good matchup against a struggling Giants defense. DeAndre Hopkins played well last week. Now he is going up against a tougher Ravens defense, but I think, he'll get the majority of the targets. The Ravens are going to try to pressure Tannehill a lot, so he's going to want to find D-Hop in those tough one-on-one matchups to get rid of the ball quickly. I think that bodes well for DeAndre. So, and George Pickens did well last week against Ravens defense. So I think Ravens kind of struggle against those top tier wide receivers. So yeah, I expect DeAndre Hopkins to have another good game. Tight end, it could have gone either way, but I'm going to go with Mark Andrews. He's just been a little bit more reliable. Now, George Kittle came off of that great 3-touchdown performance last week against Dallas. You know, it could go either way here. Kittle could do great, but again, 49ers have a lot of other options. McCaffrey, Ayuk, Debo. Whereas the Ravens, I think Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers are the only two offensive weapons that Lamar Jackson trusts right now on offense to catch the ball. So and the Titans have one of the worst pass defenses in all football. So I do like Mark Andrews matchup more. At flex, same thing. I mean, they're both good players, DK and CD. I think they both do well. I just think, with the Chargers being the worst ranked pass defense in all football, that bodes well for CD Lamb, and he'll have a bounce back game against the Chargers. Metcalf, I think he'll do fine. The Bengals defense isn't that good either, but I just think CD Lamb will do slightly better. This one wasn't even close. I think Garrett might change his defense because I think he played, if I'm not mistaken, did he play the Colts defense last week? I think he did. But I like the Eagles matchup against a Zach Wilson led team versus the Colts defense going against the Jaguars offense, who's been figuring things out the last couple of weeks. They've looked pretty competent last few weeks in London at least. So yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I do think Adrian will have a better performance at defense. So with it all being said, obviously, like I said, Adrian will get the easy win in my opinion. Just some options moving forward for Adrian, there really isn't much else you could do. I mean, maybe if you really wanted to is there no other free agent quarterback out there that you'd want to pick up? Because I just don't like this matchup for Sam Howell against against Atlanta's pass defense. And then I mean, you're playing it right, Adrian, but Drake London, is he someone to consider against Washington's really bad pass defense? Maybe, but your other three receivers are pretty good. So I think overall you're playing it well, except for your quarterback. You probably should change your quarterback. I don't think you should be worried, but if you were worried, your quarterback is definitely the one position you should definitely look to improve upon, especially since Deshaun Watson's out and can't play him. And then for Garrett, you could go either way at quarterback, Burrow or Goff. Burrow, I know Goff's been a little bit more reliable this year than Burrow, but Burrow, is he starting to figure things out? He will be at home against Seattle, whereas Goff's going on the road in Tampa. But Goff He's been looking great lately. Getting more of a connection with Sam Laporta and getting Amon-Ra St. Brown back should help too. Um, although the run game has been great too with David Montgomery, so it could go either way with these two. One thing I will say, I think you actually should start Dallas Goedert over George Kittle at tight end. That would have made it even tougher for me to decide between the tight ends in this matchup because Dallas Goedert, I know Kittle's been more reliable this year, but Goddard's going up against the worst. So the Jets were ranked the worst defense against tight ends. So they give up a lot of points to the opposing tight ends this year. So Dallas Goedert's matchup is a little bit more favorable than George Kittle's. Now the Browns defense is a little bit tougher against tight ends, even though they're going to be without um, Sean Watson, so they're not going to get a lot of help offensively. So they're going to be on the field a lot. I do think Goddard will have a better game, but it's up to you, Garrett. You decide who you want to play. And then finally, like I said, get a running back. Garrett, please get a running back. Don't play Rashawn Johnson. I know you won't. I know you'll probably pick up a different defense. You'll probably pick up a running back to make some changes to the lineup. But even then, I like Adrian's team more than yours so far. So I'm gonna go with Adrian getting the win in that matchup. So that's the show, everyone. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. You watching on a Saturday or Sunday morning if you're crazy enough to watch me right before football, but I do appreciate your patience this week. I promise I'll get these out. I am feeling better now, which is good. So I'll get these videos out on time next week, uh, barring, no other sicknesses or anything I have to deal with like that. So thank you guys so much for watching. Looking forward to week 6 and in the NFL, and have a great weekend, everyone.